My future in-laws demanded we serve a cheap, tasteless grocery store cake at our wedding to save them money, so I served it, right before revealing the magnificent three-tiered masterpiece I'd bought and hidden myself. My world was about to change in the best possible way. I was marrying Sarah, the love of my life. She's a brilliant, kind woman with a laugh that can light up a room. All I wanted was to build a life with her, a partnership based on respect and shared decisions. The wedding wasn't just a party to me, it was the starting line. It was our first major project as a team, a declaration of our new family unit. The stakes, therefore, were not about flowers or venues, they were about autonomy. My most important principle was that our marriage had to begin on our own terms, free from outside control and manipulation. The antagonists were not strangers or rivals, but Sarah's parents, Richard and Carol. On the surface, they were respectable, church-going pillars of their community. But in private, they were masters of financial and emotional control. Their love came with strings, and those strings were woven from their checkbook. They had a long history of gifting things to Sarah, only to use that generosity as leverage later. We first encountered this when we were choosing a wedding venue. We found a beautiful, rustic barn that we adored. They vetoed it. "It's far too extravagant for our money," Richard had said, even though we had offered to pay the difference. They insisted on a sterile hotel ballroom that offered a bulk discount. They weren't paying for a wedding, they were purchasing controlling shares in it. The main battle was fought over the cake. Sarah and I had gone to a tasting at a wonderful local bakery run by a French woman with a passion for her craft. We fell in love with a lemon raspberry cake with delicate buttercream frosting. It was perfect. When we excitedly told her parents about it, showing them the design, Carol scoffed. She pulled out a flyer from a local grocery store chain. "Look," she said, pointing to a picture of a sad, flat sheet cake. "This is a quarter of the price. It feeds the same number of people." "But Mom," Sarah started, "we really loved the other one. It's part of the experience." "Don't be ridiculous, Sarah," Richard cut in, his voice dripping with condescension. "It's just cake. Nobody remembers the cake. This is about being sensible with our money." He emphasized the word our. "This is our wedding gift to you, and we will not be extorted by some fancy baker." I watched the light go out of Sarah's eyes. I saw her shoulders slump in defeat. In that moment, I felt a rage so pure and cold it was almost serene. This wasn't about money. They were both successful dentists. This was about power. It was about reminding us that we were still the children, and they were the adults. They were intentionally robbing their own daughter of a small joy, just to prove that they could. I realized right then that I couldn't win by fighting them head-on. They would just threaten to pull their funding, and it would crush Sarah. But I could win the war by losing this battle. I saw the whole plan flash in my mind. Sarah was quiet on the drive home, staring out the window. "It's fine," she said, though her voice was thick with disappointment. "It's just a cake." But we both knew it was more than that. It was a symbol of their control, a harbinger of a future where every major decision, buying a house, raising our kids, would be subject to their approval. The next day I called Richard. I put on my most agreeable, slightly defeated tone. "Richard," I said with a sigh, "you know what? Sarah and I talked, and you're absolutely right. It's silly to spend so much on a cake. We really appreciate your generosity, and since it's your gift, it should absolutely be your choice. We'll go with the grocery store cake. Just let us know which one you'd like." There was a moment of surprised silence on his end, followed by a triumphant, "Excellent. Glad to see you're finally thinking sensibly, son." My first strike was malicious compliance in its purest form. I gave them exactly what they wanted, making them believe they had won. I had set the trap. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into it. Richard and Carol's smugness was unbearable. Having won the battle of the cake, they felt emboldened. Carol would call Sarah 2 or 3 times a week with helpful reminders about the wedding, each conversation a subtle jab about our expensive taste and their sensible generosity. The worst part was when Carol proudly announced at a family dinner that she had personally gone and ordered the sheet cake, just to make sure it was done right. She presented the receipt to us like it was a trophy. Their victory wasn't enough. They had to keep reminding us that we had lost. The nightmare for me was watching the toll this was taking on Sarah. The joy and excitement of planning our wedding had been replaced with anxiety and resignation. She second-guessed every choice, constantly asking, "Do you think my parents will be okay with this?" She was being conditioned to seek their approval for everything. I realized this wasn't just about a wedding. This was about saving my future wife from a lifetime of being emotionally held hostage. The system was their established pattern of control, and my secret mission was to break it, permanently. I knew I couldn't do this alone, and my allies were crucial. My fiancée, Sarah. For a week, I let her believe we had conceded. Then, one evening, when she was looking particularly defeated, I sat her down. "I have a confession," I said. "I lied to your parents. We are not having that grocery store cake." I told her the entire plan. I watched as her look of despair slowly transformed into a sly, conspiratorial grin. The light came back into her eyes. From that moment on, she wasn't the victim. She was my co-conspirator. The baker, a wonderful French woman I'll call Madame Dubois. We went back to her bakery, explained the situation in hushed tones, and paid for our dream lemon raspberry cake in cash. She listened to our story with a twinkle in her eye. "Ah," she said, her accent thick and lovely. "I understand. You are not just buying a cake. You are staging a revolution. I will help." She agreed to keep the order a complete secret and arrange for a stealth delivery to the venue on the wedding day. She was no longer just a vendor. She was a key player in our rebellion. My own parents. They are the polar opposite of the in-laws, kind, supportive, and trusting. I told them the whole story. My dad just laughed and shook his head. Good for you, son, he said. My mom, however, saw the deeper issue. You make sure you protect Sarah, she told me quietly. They offered to secretly give us the money for the real cake, a silent vote of confidence that reinforced we were doing the right thing. The morning of the wedding, as Sarah was having her hair done, she had a moment of panic. What if this is a huge mistake? She whispered to me, her eyes wide with fear. What if this ruins everything? What if they're right and we're just being childish? The years of their conditioning were powerful. For a moment, she felt like the bad daughter they had always subtly accused her of being. I took her hands in mine. This, I said, is the first day of our life. We decide what it looks like. No one else. Her fear subsided, replaced by the resolve I had come to love so much. The battleground was the reception. The hotel ballroom was beautifully decorated. The dinner was over, and the DJ announced it was time for the cake cutting. I saw Richard and Carol stand up, beaming, ready for their moment of triumph. The hotel staff, following my precise, prearranged instructions, wheeled out a small table. On it sat the grocery store sheet cake. It was exactly as horrible as we'd imagined. A flat, rectangular cake covered in a layer of greasy, sweating buttercream. The edges were decorated with sad airbrushed blue and pink swirls, and in the middle was a piece of cheap, plastic flotsam depicting two generic faceless figures. It was the physical embodiment of their cheapness and lack of taste. Carol practically glowed with pride. Sarah and I stood behind it, holding the cake knife. I leaned into the microphone. Before we cut the cake, I said, my voice carrying through the room, Sarah and I would like to say a few words. I looked directly at my new in-laws. Sarah and I would like to extend a huge thank you to her parents, Richard and Carol, for their wedding gift to us. They were very generous and very specific that their gift be this cake. They felt that a wedding cake should be a reflection of their contribution, and that it was a waste to spend too much. So, we wanted to take a moment to honor their wishes and present to you all the cake they bought us. A confused, slightly awkward silence fell over the room. My parents were smiling knowingly. The baker, Madame Dubois, who was standing at the back of the room, gave me a subtle nod. But, I continued, my voice brightening, Sarah and I also felt that our wedding day, the start of our life together, deserved something a little more special. A cake that was a reflection of our taste, our joy, and our new family. So, as our first act as a married couple, we decided to buy our own. On cue, the ballroom doors swung open. 2 staff members wheeled in a second, much larger table. On it was Madame Dubois's masterpiece. 3 magnificent tiers of ivory buttercream, cascading with delicate, handcrafted sugar lemon slices and raspberries. It was a work of art. The room erupted in gasps, followed by applause and laughter. Richard's face went from smug to confused to purple with rage. He stormed up to the stage. What is the meaning of this? He hissed, loud enough for the front tables to hear. You've embarrassed us. I smiled calmly at my new father-in-law. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. I leaned into the microphone one last time, so the whole room could hear my reply. No, Richard, I said, my voice clear and steady. You didn't want to waste money on a cake. So we're not going to. We'll be serving this one. The one we bought. Then I looked at him, and not the microphone. You didn't embarrass yourselves. We just provided everyone with a visual aid. The thematic climax was not his sputtering rage, but the sound of our guests roaring with laughter and applause as Sarah and I, together, cut into our beautiful, magnificent, and very meaningful cake. Richard and Carol left the wedding shortly after, without saying goodbye. Their sheet cake remained on its sad little table, untouched, a monument to their failed coup. The rest of the night was the best party I have ever been to. We danced, we celebrated, and we ate every last crumb of that delicious lemon raspberry cake. The story became an instant legend within our family and circle of friends. Richard and Carol had lost the one thing they truly cared about: their image. They were no longer seen as generous patrons, but as the petty, controlling figures they truly were. They had been publicly and masterfully outplayed. It's been 5 years. Our marriage is strong, happy, and blessedly free of their interference. The power dynamic was redrawn permanently on our wedding day. They are still in our lives, but their opinions are now just that: opinions. They have no leverage, no control. Every year on our anniversary, we eat a slice of lemon raspberry cake. It's a tradition. It's not just to remember our wedding day, but to remember the day we declared our independence. We started our marriage by choosing our own joy over their control, and it was the best decision we ever made.